Part 53. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 533. Super Hurricane, Smashing the Waves. If you turn these natural anger into a wizard's spell effect, there is no doubt in the scope of the legendary 9-ring magic. Perhaps some master-level spells can match the hurricanes and waves in front of the spells, but the scope of action is no doubt less than the storm around Violet. However, neither the hurricane nor the waves are the root of this natural disaster. The reason for all the earthquakes is that there is a big earthquake. If Zai can successfully display the inscriptions of the two masters of the earth and combine them into the true spirit of the earth, then you can suppress the smoothing of violets. A large earthquake near the island trembled, guarding the entire island and college. If the spell fails, the surviving mana of Zai will have no chance of a second attempt. It will only clean up the mess and try to keep the people alive. Violet Island is bound to cease to exist and collapse in the super catastrophe. In the middle, whether it is the Violet Academy, the Violet Castle or the Plane Transmission Center, all will be destroyed, and everything must start from the beginning. At this moment when the future fate of tens of thousands of people will be decided, Zai is not panicked. He is as stable as ever. He has encountered various crises in the past 30 years of Xingai roaming. He has already been like a street stepping in life and death. Ordinary. The inscriptions of the two masters of the earth elements have already been carved into a clear image in the mind of Zai. With zero assistance, he will never have handshakes or mistakes. The sky is cracking. The spell model of the first master's inscription on the earth's inscription is being presented in the heart of the lake. The magic in the etheric heart lake is like a star, rising into the air and gathering into the spell model. The reason why this spell has become a savage tyrant's name is because the effect of this spell is beyond the power of the legendary spells of the legendary spellcaster. The earth has started a new round of vibrations. This vibration is not homologous. Yang suspended hundreds of residents of Nanhai town in the air using floating spells. Each of them had a white bubble around them, protected from hurricanes and heavy rains. Yang's gaze quickly turned to the violet tower in the distance. This wave of volatility came from his own tutor, President Zai. The earth's vibrations under the feet are getting stronger and stronger, and countless people are dizzy and unable to stand firm. However, the energy of the earth elements guided by Zai began to show its great power. Just like detonating a super bomb at the foot, the fierce land fission is rapidly spreading out from the center of Violet Island. The rock is flying up and the waves are blowing. At the same time, the sky above the sky spreads its wings, and the water in the sea water manipulating the waves, almost instantly, formed a comprehensive counter-attack situation. The hurricanes, tsunami, and tremors controlled by Zai also appeared at the same time, forming a stalemate with the power of nature. The entire Violet Island is like a storm. All the disasters seem to be resolved in an instant. The earth under the feet is not in the lineup. There is no hurricane in the sky. The waves in the sky disappear and disappear. It seems that the disaster is over. Many people began to cheer for joy, celebrate this great victory, and be proud of the powerful magic of President Zai. However, whether it is Sufi, the master of music, or Natalia, Yang, Meryl, etc., all know that this is a short-lived piece. How can one person compete with nature? Once the magic in Zai is exhausted, then the violet is still invincible. The whole person of Zai has been transformed into an etheric element, and his spirit is extended to a dozen kilometers away. This is the front line of Zai's spells and the power of nature. The two are completely different. The tremors of the earthquake are violently conflicting here, and the sea floor below the sea is undergoing dramatic changes. Some places have been torn into huge trenches, and in some places they have risen to rocks and land and become new islands. Zai is fully exerting his own 9-ring spells on the edge of the legendary field, and now he is only a final step away from his legendary field. Zai squeezed the last magic in the heart of the lake and began to display the last inscription of the master's meta-element. It is also the 8th story 9-ring legendary spell, the Earth Order. Regardless of any elemental field of geothermal feng shui, the two master elemental inscriptions composed by Ziwei always have one representative destruction, one representative creation, one manufacturing destruction, one nurturing vitality, and the Earth Order is one that can determine the Earth Elemental Order, the spell that has already calmed down the already wild elements of the Earth, and the upper limit of this spell is immeasurable. This is the last and most difficult inscription of a Master Order element. The spell model in Ziwei's Inhu Lake has been complicated to the extreme. Any magician under the master level can't see and understand the memory, just the note of the spell. More than 1,200, in addition to Ziwei with zero help, only those true legendary casters and even legends can cast such a spell. This is the real 9-ring legendary spell. Before the situation in Violet Island was already in jeopardy, there was a crisis of overturning in almost a moment. Even though Ziwei used the land order at that time, there was not enough time to redetermine the restoration, but now, the sky is cracking. The fierce collision with the help of the other three elements of the true spirit of the front against the natural Tianwei, gave Ziwei a fleeting casting time. But this is enough. Ziwei sang the inscription of the element of the Earth Order. At this moment, he seems to have completely become the master of the Earth elements, controlling the movement of all the Earth elements in the nearby area, and maximizing their order. Calm down. A huge illusion appeared above the Violet Tower, and countless violets who were watching the West Victoria clearly saw this scene. Their eyes were filled with the trust of the president of Ziwei and the powerful magic that was enough to change the land. Envy and admiration witnessed the display of legendary spells. I don't know how many people made a great wish in this moment. I want to be a powerful magician like President Ziwei. The huge phantom finally formed, and it was all yellowish in color. It condensed into a seemingly ordinary yellow giant bull. It licked its own neck and licked its heels. The two huge horns were sharp and mighty. Dimensions not only successfully cast the Earth Order spells, but also summoned the combination of two Earth element inscriptions to evoke the true external manifestation of the Earth's true spirit. At this point, through the frost and cold prison, water of vitality, two water masters inscriptions on the water elements, burning the flames, the fire of the sun, two masters of fire elements inscriptions, eternal storm, the inspiration of the two masters of the elements of the wind and the inscriptions of the two masters of the earth, and the inscription of the two elements of the earth, finally summoned the four elements of the true spirits to the world of the Orient. World and external manifestation, which means the West, the modern element of the Victorian school of magic, has completed the most important layer of deduction, and the upper limit of the system has also been upgraded from the master of magic to the legendary caster. And Ziwei himself, in the moment of completing the inscriptions of the 8 masters, successfully promoted the legendary caster, and the name justified into the legendary field. In the moment of the legendary achievement, the cage that had been smashed by the soul of Ziwei for a long time collapsed in an instant, and collapsed. The soul of Ziwei was like a prisoner who had just regained freedom. He rushed to the next destination with joy and comfort, and the soul level reappeared. Jump to a level. If the soul level of ordinary people is in the first sequence, the soul level of Ziwei has jumped to the 8th sequence, the 9th sequence from the sanctuary, the 10th sequence of the demigod, and the 11th sequence of the gods are no longer so far away. The promotion of the soul level has made Ziwei's manipulation of magic once again a step. The understanding of the elemental source has also become clearer from the fog, which is very helpful for his future exploration of the deep mysteries of the elements. The current spellcasting and combat ability of Ziwei is far beyond the legendary caster, and even to the extent of the University of Copenhagen's Heimerdean, Blue Dragon Lannister, Venice United Magic School President Cesare and others. The earthly real ox has finally rushed out to the front of the conflict. As soon as the road passes, the earth is once again flattened. The island of Violin, which was already on the verge of collapse, has finally become solid again, just like the real continent. Same. The footsteps of the earthly true oxen did not stop. He rushed all the way to the distance, and the islands that were created by the collision of the naturally ruptured spells and the natural powers were strengthened and determined, and the tribute to the center of Violet Island would be honored. All the large earthquakes within 100 kilometers have subsided. The update has not been written yet, is being written, replaced after completion. Super Hurricane, smashing the waves. If you turn these natural anger into the wizard's spell effect, there is no doubt in the scope of the legendary 9-ring magic. Perhaps some master-level spells can match the hurricanes and waves in front of the spells, but the scope of action is no doubt less than the storm around Violet. However, neither the hurricane nor the waves are the root of this natural disaster. The reason for all the earthquakes is that there is a big earthquake. If Zai can successfully display the inscriptions of the two masters of the earth and combine them into the true spirit of the earth, then you can suppress the smoothing of violets. A large earthquake near the island trembled, guarding the entire island and college. If the spell fails, the surviving mana of Zai will have no chance of a second attempt. It will only clean up the mess and try to keep the people alive. Violet Island is bound to cease to exist and collapse in this super catastrophe. In the middle, whether it is the Violet Academy, the Violet Castle or the Plane Transmission Center, all will be destroyed, and everything must start from the beginning. At this moment when the future fate of tens of thousands of people will be decided, Zai is not panicked. He is as stable as ever. He has encountered various crises in the past 30 years of Xingai roaming. He has already been like a street stepping in life and death. Ordinary. The inscriptions of the two masters of the earth elements have already been carved into a clear image in the mind of Zai. With zero assistance, he will never have handshakes or mistakes. The sky is cracking, the spell model of the first master's inscription on the earth's inscription is being presented in the heart of the lake. The magic in the etheric heart lake is like a star, rising into the air and gathering into the spell model. The reason why this spell has become a savage tyrant's name is because the effect of this spell is beyond the power of the legendary spells of the legendary spellcaster. The earth has started a new round of vibrations. This vibration is not homologous. Yang suspended hundreds of residents of Nanhai town in the air using floating spells. Each of them had a white bubble around them, protected from hurricanes and heavy rains. Yang's gaze quickly turned to the violet tower in the distance. This wave of volatility came from his own tutor, President Zai. The earth's vibrations under the feet are getting stronger and stronger, and countless people are dizzy and unable to stand firm. However, the energy of the earth elements guided by Zai began to show its great power. Just like detonating a super bomb at the foot, with the Violet Island as the center, the terrible earth fission quickly spreads out, the rock swells, and the waves slammed into the face, while the sky above the sky spreads wings. The water in the sea water manipulated the waves, and almost instantly, formed a comprehensive counter-attack situation. The hurricane, tsunami, and large earthquakes controlled by Zai appeared at the same time, and formed a stalemate with the power of nature. The entire Violet Island is like a storm. All the disasters seem to be resolved in an instant. The earth under the feet is not in the lineup. There is no hurricane in the sky. The waves in the sky disappear and disappear. It seems that the disaster is over. Many people began to cheer for joy, celebrate this great victory, and be proud of the powerful magic of President Zai. However, whether it is Sufi, the master of music, or Natalia, Yang, Meryl, etc., all know that this is a short-lived piece. How can one person compete with nature? Once the magic in Zai is exhausted, then the violet is still invincible. The whole person of Zai has been transformed into an etheric element, and his spirit is extended to a dozen kilometers away. This is the front line of Zai's spells and the power of nature. The two are completely different. The tremors of the earthquake are violently conflicting here, and the sea floor below the sea is undergoing dramatic changes. Some places have been torn into huge trenches, and in some places they have risen to rocks and land and become new islands. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Du. Chapter 534. Perhaps this is really going to fall in front of this young and overexposed Civ-master, and his relationship with him must start to change slowly from simple friends. So try to start making changes. Sophie made a tough decision, but after making this decision, she was a lot easier, and the shoulder burden seemed to disappear in an instant. Ziwei finally stopped casting spells. Whether it was the sky and the phoenix in the sky or the water and the ox in the distant sea, the four elements of the true spirit disappeared, and the calmness was over. Everything was over. Freed from this wild and unparalleled disaster, most of the violets gathered in the school square, and some fanatics looked at everything that happened around them. At this time, Ziwei undoubtedly became the only backbone of all people. He saved everyone and saved the violet. For the future, he will surely lead everyone to move on. Ziwei used the transmission spell to appear in front of everyone. The magic in his heart lake that has been promoted to the legendary field is automatically restored to an almost overflowing state. The ethereal element lake is undergoing subtle changes and evolving toward a more powerful level. It will be a process that lasts for a while. The whole person of Ziwei looks refreshed, and the body seems to be wearing a shining spotlight. For his age that is too young, the worry that seems to be unreliable is all gone. Everyone quietly looks at Ziwei, waiting for his next speech. Violet students and citizens, the glorious Lord has just left the world of Orient, and this catastrophe that swept through the whole of Orient was just the result, even though I have calmed the catastrophe near Violet, but the whole world there will be earth-shaking changes. The good times of peace and development will be memories of the past. With the departure of the glorious Lord, the sun above us has become a catastrophe. The dark forces that have been suppressed by the Church of the glorious Lord for thousands of years, the devil in the endless abyss, the undead in the bones, the dark elves in the dark areas, and other powerful beings from the multifaceted plane, will launch an offensive against the entire Orient world. The war is about to come to this world, the turbulent age already coming. But students, please don't worry, this is not the end of the world, but the beginning of a new round of change. The transformation from magic to arcane will greatly expand the number of magicians, which will inevitably change the future of the entire Oran. The pattern of the special world, although the flower of arcane has just begun to bloom, it will inevitably open up the whole world in the near future. And you will become the creator of history, the pioneer of the era. In this great era, the outstanding ones of you will be forever engraved in the long history and be admired by future generations. Ziwei's speech was not long, but he quickly mobilized everyone's emotions and rescued them from the panic of rushing attacks. Almost everyone was fighting high spirits. After all, just now, President Ziwei personally gave it to everyone. Demonstrate how much a powerful magician or arcane master can do, one person's strength against Tianwei and victory in battle. This is an unforgettable memory, and what a brilliant hero. Now, 6 new islands have emerged from the sea, guarding the violets. The birth of the 6 islands has benefited from the magical confrontation between me and nature. Therefore, Violet naturally has sovereignty over these 6 islands, and we will soon begin to the development and construction of the 6 islands. Violet will serve as a new force on the stage of the Orient continent. The catastrophe caused by the departure of the glorious Lord will not last long. Until the end of the disaster, all Violets, the college's lecturers and students, your family will be free to migrate to Violet, and the college will provide you with enough convenience. Under my protection, it will be a quiet, peaceful, and vibrant place. Paradise. The small land of the original Violet Island could not satisfy the expansion of the whole force, but now, with 6 islands ranging from 50 square kilometers to 600 square kilometers, the development of Violets will usher in a new stage of takeoff. Many of the students of the Violet Academy students are still stranded in their hometowns. Therefore, Ziwei must relieve the worries of all students, so that Violet as a complete force can better preserve its core strength. It's a great leader, a powerful magician, a pioneer of Arcane, a legend of the future, a great Archean. Many of the magician and apprentice lecturers and students have admired the West. They are also full of confidence in the future under the leadership of President Zaiwei. If Violet is now a prosperous future, the rest of the continent is almost a sad scene of post-disaster relief. The catastrophic catastrophe that swept through the whole of the Orient world lasted for a whole day. Except for a handful of places where the strongest people were seated, most countries and regions shivered in front of this terrible natural disaster. Countless people died and lost their lives. It is even bigger than incredible. Houses collapsed, roads were cut off, food shortages, drinking water pollution, and even more terrible were robberies and riots. Even in the big cities under the state machine rule, there have been many violent incidents, not to mention those remote places. In just one day, the number of deaths in the entire continent of Orient has exceeded 1 million, and the number of disabled people is countless. If it is only a natural disaster, perhaps humans can still recover from calm in the long time, but the turbulent age has already on the advent, the Dark Council has already blown the horn of the attack. The cataclysm caused by the departure of the glorious Lord has the most profound influence on the main material plane. On the contrary, it does not cause much harm to other multiplanes. The smote plane has almost no loss except for a slight vibration. It can be said that it is brilliant. The departure of the Lord indirectly sent a surprise to the Dark Council. Under the dark canopy of the Rhine Union, it has become the ocean of the dead. The original lush black forest red land of the green grass, now has become a land of withered yellow, scattered with a strong atmosphere of death. One after another huge undead warfare building and mechanical glory and glory show the sharp, elite army of the dead. It is more ready to go, waiting for their only king, the command of the undead king Bades. The face of the undead king, Bards, has long since had no human skin and muscles. His skin is grayish, but his pupils are shining with gray color, and the whole body is wearing huge iron steel armor. Dressed in a cloak of death shadow, it looks pretentious, and the wind of the king is coming. Around him is a large group of undead masters, powerful necroans, at least the masters of the masters, and the powers of the legendary field are not uncommon. It can be said that the elite of the entire city of the dead are gathered here. The Lord of Glory has already left, and the destiny of darkness will eventually dominate the entire world of Orient. Now, launch the general attack on Orient, and use the undead natural disasters that swept the whole world to start the horror of the Dark Council and the capital of the dead. The undead King Bades raised his huge horror blade in his hand, a horrible legendary sword, with a strong sense of death, as if the legendary death should have weapons. Hey, the mountains and the wild, the endless army of the dead, the necromancer, the flesh and blood, the sacral cavalry, the Bohai, all the dead eyes are shining with the grey soul of the fire, responding to the call from the undead king. Dark sky, open, the undead king Bades inserted the long sword in his hand into the earth under his feet. The huge magical array that had already been ready to start began to work. The dark sky in the sky was like an open umbrella, and the part of the surrounding and the horizon was slowly rising, constantly stretching outwards, trying to cover the entire Rhine Union under the rule of the dark sky. With the departure of the Lord of Glory, the only catastrophe of the catastrophe has been very weak against the dark sky, which makes the expansion of the dark sky almost at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the offensive from the undead King Bades has started. At the same time, in the far east, on the Hullen Prairie, the Orc King, the Baladi from the Tiger, is rallying the Orcs' main ethical command of the Orc, and holds a swearing-in meeting. Baladi is a brave and deceitful king. 13 years ago, he defeated his 12 brothers and sisters and boarded the Orc throne. 5 brothers died and 4 sisters became his women. The remaining 3 brothers were ashamed and became the puppets manipulated in his hands. Baladi himself is also a strong leader of the legendary peak. Although it seems to be a generation less than the first king of the Orcs, the power is already very strong. However, Baladi is not satisfied, His ambition is so big that it is unimaginable. He can't stand his kingdom, can only be trapped in the small Hullen prairie, can only be discouraged by the rich and prosperous Uland continent. The once Orc Empire was the most powerful country in the world of Orient. Even the elves with the shelter of Lady Silvermoon could only tremble under the arms of the orcs, and humans were only small and weak slaves. But now, the number of legendary powerhouses in the entire human race has already exceeded 100. The 7 legendary magicians and the presence of more than a dozen sacred powerhouses have made the arrogant Baladi not dare to act rashly and restore the glory of the once Orc Empire. It seems to have become a luxury that is impossible to achieve. But now, everything is different. The glorious Lord, the evil spirit that gave human power, has finally gone. The weak humans have lost their greatest reliance. At the same time, the demon of the infinite abyss brings a cooperative alliance, giving the orcs more power. The power of Baladi felt this powerful force. He even broke through the limits of the legendary peak and stepped into the real sanctuary. He has surpassed all the orc kings for 200 years. Now he is full of confidence, and the Orc Empire will be his. Hands reappeared brilliantly. Baladi's first chest came out of the gold account. His straight body was more than 5 meters high, his teeth were sharp, his claws were sharp, his muscles exploded, and his momentum was full. Beyond the gold account, leaders of important races of traditional orcs such as lions, leopards, wolves, cows, and foxes have gathered here, waiting for the appearance of Baladi. My compatriots, for 2,000 years, the orcs have been trapped in the small Hullen grassland. Our empire has already collapsed. We have been enduring human oppression. This painful fate seems to be completely invisible. Baladi's tiger eyes swept across all the faces of the commanders. Some of them were excited, some were numb, some were thoughtful, but now, everything is different. The glory of the human beings has left, weak human beings will surely become our prey. Now, when we re-raise the banner of the Orc Empire, revenge on humanity, and restore the moments that the Empire once had. Unlike the young and simple Orc warriors, these tribes are almost all old fritters. They are not very interested in Baladi's speech. The leader of the Turan, Sarah Bloodhoof, stands out. Wang, the peace between the orcs and humans has been maintained for more than 800 years. The Hullen prairie is so lush, the water plants are so sweet, and our orcs can continue to grow and develop in this world. Far from the point of the mountains and rivers, it is not a human being 2,000 years ago. Although they have lost the refuge of the glorious Lord, they still have powerful magicians, even surpassing the former teacher elves. The number of them is not only the sanctuary, the legend, or the master. Super orcs, we are not human opponents. Stupid Bloodhoof humans have already done the leaders of Orient for 2,000 years. Do you think their enemies are only us orcs? Bearer raised his voice. We are not alone, but the opposite. I have found the strongest ally for the Orc Empire. Baladi gently applauded, and a man with a cloak appeared beside him. Then, the man disarmed, and his body suddenly expanded rapidly, reaching a height of more than 10 meters. The power of terror spread on him, and the magic fire was violently roasting on him. He was so horrible and powerful that he trembled countless people. The horror demon Nodok, the fox patriarch Saurus recognized the demon. He is one of the 7 demon kings of the endless abyss, the horrible war messenger Nodok. If the tyrannical Lord Razgarda is the strongest of the 7 devils, then the horror demon Nodok is the devil who is best at spreading fear and making everyone fear. He is also a warrior. The pioneer of the village. What shocked Saurus is that the horror demon Nodok appeared in front of him is not the summoned projection, but the real body, which means that the beast master Baladi has reached a substantive cooperation with the endless abyss, and the orcs are inevitable. The chariot that was rolled up in the endless abyss. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 535. Orc, your ancestors used to be the rulers of half the world, but now you can only be trapped in this small grassland. Your former slave humans have begun to conquer the multifacets and try to the world becomes their bag of things. This will continue to develop, and one day sooner or later, you will all become human slaves and playthings, the horror demon Nezg screamed. There is a commotion in the audience. This is also the biggest worry of many orcs with insights. The development of human beings is too fast, and the orcs have stagnated for thousands of years. In order to form a common alliance against humanity, I represent the infinite abyss and sent you a generous gift. The powerful magic crystal, which has been strengthened in the bottom of the endless abyss for more than 300 years, each one there is a powerful force. The horror demon Nodic waved a large hand, and a large piece of green magic crystal shines in front of everyone. Inject the power of magic crystal into you, you will gain a powerful amount like never before. This power will make you invincible. Bamol, come, Barati shouted to his eldest son, the brave little tiger. Bamur, the head of the tiger's head, listened to the call of his father and came to the beasts. The eyes of the horror demon Nodic stared at him for a moment, and a huge magic crystal floated in front of him. Swallow, you will get the power out there automatically. Bamur did not say anything. The magic crystal that grabbed this green oil swallowed the belly. Under the watchful eyes of almost all orc nobles in Wangting, his body changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The green magical pattern quickly emerged, like the extended vines. His eyes began to shine with the green magical fire, and the muscles broke out. A wild power was generated in his body. This change made Bamur clench his hands in madness. His sudden punch hit the ground under his feet. The horrible vibration was quickly transmitted to all the people. The earth was torn, and a huge crack appeared at the foot. This change is so rapid that many people have not reacted. Knowing that everything has returned to calm, the smoke has dissipated, and the orc nobles who have gathered around the cracks have taken a deep breath. This crack is far from bottom, which is far away. Far beyond the original power of Bamul. Bamur's chest was undulating, his face was full of excitement and joy. As the father said, this is a powerful gift. He was originally an orc warrior who just entered the master level, but now he owns it. The power to compete with the legend. Accept this gift, the rise of the orcs will come. The beast master Baladi's tiger eyes looked around at all the orc nobles under his feet, forcing them to use the magic crystal to strengthen themselves. No, the glory of the orc tradition can never be humiliated. I only accept the strength of my own efforts. Baladi, you have embarked on the evil path. Who knows what bad thoughts in these abyss devils secretly? I never listened. I said that they will help anyone for no reason. On the contrary, they have destroyed countless races and planes. At this moment, the soldier from the lions, Lalda, stood up. He had a mighty beard and had a powerful force. Even in the orc meeting of the orc 5 years ago, he defeated himself in the wrestling match. The beast master of the beast, Baladi, is known as the first warrior among the orcs. He is also a legendary warrior. Lalda's words also confirmed the worries of many orc aristocrats. Who knows what kind of minds these devils have? What are the drawbacks of these magic crystals? Lald, don't hold your orc first warrior and feel self-satisfied. I haven't used all my strength all the time. Now, it's time for you to see how powerful I am. Baladi disdain looked at Lard, or from the beginning he expected Laldi's to stand up, and Baladi jumped off the platform and went to Lard. All orc aristocrats have stepped back and left the open space of a gladiator to two people. Respecting the strong has always been the tradition of the orcs. Baladi, I am not afraid of you and your magic energy. Lard did not hesitate to take up the whole body, like a lion, rushed to the opposite of Baladi. However, Baladi still stood in the same position with his arms folded, just as Lard was about to approach him. The original pattern on his forehead suddenly burst into a faint golden and green intertwining glory, and even began reappears beyond the skin. St. Mark, the fox patriarch Saurus was once again shocked. After hundreds of years, the orcs finally gave birth to a sanctuary. The original fierce Lalda suddenly felt a huge depression and pain after approaching Barati for 5 meters. The body was originally filled with the power of near explosion. It seems to have disappeared in an instant, and his pace of assault is slow down, the momentum is greatly reduced. This is the power of the field that the Beastmaster Bardi condenses after the promotion of the sanctuary. Within the scope of the field, it greatly suppresses the power of others and reduces their courage and fighting spirit. Baladi's arms muscles skyrocketed, and almost instantly, he jumped up quickly, flew to Lalda, grabbed his neck, and suppressed all the remaining forces of Lard, and put him raising up. Lard's feet and tail left the ground. Lalda was tightened in the throat, he became red and red, using all the explosive skills but still cannot break free. Baladi's hands are far better than the steel, without any shake. I witnessed the performance of the orc first warrior in the hands of the Beastmaster Baladi as a kitten, and all the orcs were silent. Baladi replaced Lalda with one hand and turned him around. A pair of tiger eyes and each orc aristocrat looked at it again. This left the weak Lalda on the ground. Don't waste time, is up, the orc empire will surely reproduce its glory in my hands. Follow the order of the king. A number of orc nobles came forward and swallowed the magical crystals donated by the horror demon Razg. They used the power of magic power to strengthen themselves. Their strength soared and they rose by a large margin. Order. At the end of the day, only the fox patriarch Saurus was left. He was an old fox and the most powerful shaman of the orc, and he believed in the ancient ancestor. Saurus twitched out of the crowd. Wang, I am already dying, I am afraid I can't accept this powerful magic. As a shaman, my duty is to communicate the ancestors and the spirit of the elements, even if there is no magic. I don't think I will drag my legs. Baladi also maintained the necessary respect for the spiritual leader shaman, who had been 1,000 years old. He nodded lightly and motioned that Saurus could strengthen himself without the magic crystal. The orc nobles who swallowed the magic crystals felt the powerful power of the new skyrocketing. It seemed to restore the powerful courage of the ancestors. They responded to the command of the Beastmaster Baladi and would convene all the tribes and rush out of Hullen. The prairie, launching a general attack on the humanity of the Orient world. This will also be the vanguard of the rise of the Orc Empire for a full 1,800 years. As the largest city in the southeast of the Orient world, Kingstown is also the last shining place of the light of the Orient civilization. As the most oriental port of the Golden Sea, as the hub connecting the two continents, it has always been the most a big city with a reputation. The cataclysm one day ago caused a violent shock inside the town of Junction, and the houses collapsed, but the buildings were basically slums. The real functional buildings collapsed the ancient walls of 700 years ago. In general, the problem is not big. There is no strong country to rule here. Kingsburg itself is a city-state and the most powerful and appealing of all the city-states in southeastern Europe. In these 200 years, Kingstown has a strong the guardian, that is, the great master from the mysterious mainland of China, brings the mystery of the monk's professional and chi to the flow of Orient. A beautiful mountain outside of Junshiveo is the place where Yungziaozong was founded by Lu Yunzao. It can be said that almost all the most powerful and powerful monks in the whole world of Orient have practiced here and accepted the flow. Master's personal guidance from Yungziao. At the highest point of Yunzong Zone, the clouds linger in the bamboo forest like a fairyland. The great master is wearing a black exercise suit and carrying his hands on the mountain, looking at the east. He is very old, must be white, not tall, looks like a very ordinary old man, but with a wonderful harmony with nature. The Lord of God is out of position, the heavens and the earth have changed greatly, and the Shenzhou enchantment laid by the dragon is still in peace, Lu Yun said, If you stop, this life may not be able to return home, and you will eventually be buried in this cloud mountain. Since the Lord when I leave, the chaos will follow, and the strength of one person will protect the Yungziao mountain, but I will not be able to protect the fortress. When I look for the heroes of the Orient, I can't get through this world. Robbery. No one would have thought that this great monk of the monk who was famous in the mainland of Orient, had already given birth to his hometown. Unfortunately, for thousands of years, only a few Shenzhou people could leave by chance. Shenzhou, but no one can return to Shenzhou through the enchantment again. The Thousand Law Tower, the magical Holy Land, is safe and sound in the cataclysm. Even without the title of 2 legends and more than a dozen legendary casters, the magical protection array of the Thousand Laws Tower is enough to fight this kind of natural disaster. The departure of the glorious Lord, the Holocaust remnant and the subsequent cataclysm are also greatly shocking to the magician of the Thousand Law Tower, and the 7th Law de Dura and the ABI's Law Council President Beau Scholar Anthony also appeared again under the first law of Tolaifat's Tower. The owner has been conducting various magic experiments recently. He is completely intoxicated. If you are not the 2 of you, he will never interrupt the experiment, said the housekeeper Eric Didola, and Anthony looked at it and thought about it. The first law that appears in the Purple Tower is still filled with the powerful magic that is pure to the extreme. It is just a little bit of mana dust that is scattered, and it is enough to display a 7-ring spell of master class. Obviously, Tolaifat has just emerged from the source of magic. His spirit is excited and exhausted. My 2 old friends, you are really diligent. Have you been 3 months since the last time? Tolaifat, the glory of the Lord has left the world. The Dark Council will launch a general attack. According to the report of the cold Will Kelsed, the dark sky over the Rhine Union has opened and continued to expand. Ludwig the Greek ruling party has convened the entire army of the whole army, and will confront the undead kings in the front and the bones. Anthony speaks quickly. Tolaifat, do we want to join the battle? Where is the Tower of the Thousand Law, Step? Although the front of the Emperor Didela did not speak, she also looked at Turafat and waited for his reply. However, Tolaifat waved his hand gently. It seemed that everything was not important. He slowly walked. The truth I have seen is far more profound than you. The departure of the glorious Lord is not an accident, but the status quo is an accident. This accident certainly happened to another on the mainland of Orient. I think you understand. I don't know much about the lady, but I think her trouble is very big. Can get rid of it, no one can decide. So the current dark turmoil is not enough. Although I dismiss the gods are not as simple as those thoughts of the gods. The situation is very complicated, and the Tower of the Thousand Laws is still. Don't worry too much about it. How is the future? Everything is still chaotic. Anthony and Dixie silently absorbed the meaning of Tolaifat's words. Obviously, the First Law Lord knew more insights and secrets than they knew. Don't forget to continue to pursue and explore the mystery of magic. Magic is the power closest to the origin of the universe. Our future is very bright. Tolaifat patted his hands gently. Okay, put all the troubles and worries are thrown away. If I am there, the Tower of the Thousand Law will not fall, and everything is under control. Then don't bother you. Lord Turafat Dila and Anthony chose to leave. In any case, this time, Tarafat answered the 2 questions positively and gave the answers. No longer worry and be confused. Next, the Temple of Thousand Laws will also implement the policy of supporting all countries and forces of humanity, but it will never be shirtless, and the charge is on the front line. The Dark Council is not the most powerful and final enemy. The Tower of Law must preserve power. The cataclysm of the glorious Lord has caused a super hurricane and tsunami on the Golden Sea. Zai Wei has guarded the entire Violet and officially promoted to the legendary caster, Dixie said with a smile to Anthony. The earthquake was not terrible. The tsunami and hurricane caused by the earthquake were even more horrible. Anthony said with emotion, the legend of 18 years old. It is really another Wildest. No, he is even more mature than Wheelie Stir. I have been building my own school and spreading my thoughts. I think he will soon be promoted to the next title. What about you, my scholar? Did Eula suddenly stopped? You have entered the legendary field for 500 years. Trained a full 16 legendary casters, and a sixth law. Always I am very curious, why are you still not promoted to the title? I am old, I have not found my own path and direction. Anthony shook his head. The road ahead is difficult. How can you see the fog? Is Zywei and his arcane system have very strong potential? Maybe in the future on the road of Arcane, I will make a breakthrough. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 536. The earth under the feet is still full of rich chaos. It will cause great harm to the body for ordinary people. I really can't imagine that the president of Zywei was fighting against the power of terror. Fraser, who uses the floating technique, feels that the elemental crystal ball in his hand is smoothing the elements that are scattered around the island. This is the new faculty mission of Zywei through the Western Ways spell list to reward the arcane point. It is open to the magician. They will use the elemental crystal ball issued by the college to calm the island because of the violent collision, and several the elements caused by the legendary spells are chaotic and turbulent. If this problem is not solved, ordinary people will not be able to board the island and develop. It is only a small trouble for Zywei, but for the students of Violet, it is an opportunity for them to deepen their understanding of the elements. Zywei has released this rewarding task. Almost all the Violet students who are qualified to take this task have responded. 6 new islands born of legendary spells and cataclysm violent collisions are also very mysterious to them. Worth exploring. The spells played by President Zywei are all 9-ring legendary spells. His power has already exceeded the worldly imagination. Very delicate creations, and such a large number should be the standard of the legendary mysterious magic factory. Product. Esmeralda looked at the elemental crystal ball in her hand. She has injected a lot of chaotic and active elements into it. The whole crystal ball presents a colorful flowing haze, which is very magnificent. There is always a feeling that we are creating a new world, and it is changing with each passing day. Udayu has made a huge earth element, and the earth after the elements have been blended has been hardened and smoothed. The planning of the 6 islands has been freshly released, and it is located in the north. The island will be the largest civilian residential area, commercial center, and food-producing area in the future Violet territory. The other 5 islands will be built with specialized research institutes of different magic schools and new mage towers. Yes, Violet's new magic master Maurice is about to own a mage tower of his own. President Zywei fully supports and provides him with most of the Master Tower technology and resources. The Master Tower has great appeal to every magician. It will be your own home, laboratory, library, and research holy land, equivalent to your own kingdom. Even if you are just beginning to meditate on a magic apprentice who has just mastered the first 0-ring spell, you will dream of owning a mage tower of your own. Yang, Charlotte, and Meryl became the main leaders of the 6 islands. They were in a busy state, but their lives were very fulfilling. And 11 Wei is in the face of the music master Sophie, a very important conversation. Zywei, what do you think about beliefs and gods? Will you seek a suitable priesthood in the future and embark on the road of sacredness? Sophie became a close friend almost when she first met Zywei. But they never talked about these major issues involving the road and future choices. After all, friendship is a personal relationship. Both Sophie and Zywei have their own powers. Once the private affairs and public affairs are mixed, it will inevitably affect the long-term friendship. But now, Sophie took the initiative to find Zywei and raised this question. Zywei knew what it meant, so his answer was very cautious and obviously it was well thought out. I personally have no prejudice against faith. Most human beings need a belief in order to have their own direction and goals. Life seems to have relied on it. Uland has only seen the two gods of Silver Moon and the glorious Lord so far. Oh, to be honest, they are doing well. Ziwei paused for a moment. Although I am full of curiosity and desire to explore the mystery of the gods, I chose the path of the Arcanist. Although the road ahead is rough, it may not be able to come out of an immortality different from the gods. Road. Ziwei, who has been promoted to the legendary field and is very promising to be the next legendary magician, clearly has the qualification to talk to Sophie about these topics. I saw the violet, here is alive and well, and the future is huge. In the turbulent years of the future, it is likely to become a land of paradise and order. Ziwei, can I spread my faith here and form a bard will? Sophie looked at Ziwei quietly. She seemed to have some difficulty in speaking, but after reading it, she looked very calm. Obviously this was something she had considered for a long time. This request apparently surprised Ziwei. So what about Pai Li? You have been running a 7-year-old network. I have a great name in the Arab kingdom from Parana to the whole of the French kingdom, but it is the territory of the Golden Lion family after all, and the younger lady of the morning, Eulizia, is far stronger than me. Sophie Firm said, although I have been seeking the priesthood of music, I know almost nothing about war and killing. In the future, if I want to climb the throne, I must rely on the help of others. I don't know if you can extend it? Helping hands help me seal my in the future. This is almost the same as Cheng Cheng. Although Ziwei has always appreciated Sophie, she can't think of her as a demigod anyway. She would be so optimistic about herself who just promoted her legend. He took a deep breath and looked straight into the Soviet Union. Philippine rose-like eyes, you have made a decision. Yes, this is my choice. I join my Musicians Association and the Bard Professional System to join the Violet for your arcane ideas. I hope you can allow me to spread inside the territory of Violet. Faith, I and the Bard will be integrated into the Violet, no longer separate from each other. Sophie is like a rose, and before the coming era of the gods, she has already voted all the chips in her hand. People, that is Ziwei. This means that Sophie firmly believes that Ziwei can not only achieve the title legend, but also achieve the immortal level of immortality in the future era of the gods, and help her to board the music god. Your trust and attention made me very moved. Ziwei stood up and extended his right hand to Sophie. In the territory of Violet, your faith will be free to spread. Self below, no matter who pays you trust can accept. Arcanists will go hand in hand with the bard, casting a glorious future. Sophie also happily stood up and stretched out the white jade hand, and tightly held together with Ziwei. The belief in music can be said to be harmless and elegant. It is a kind of enjoyment that human beings pursue after a long time of survival. Ziwei firmly believes that in the territory of Violet, arcane will inevitably be an eternal trend. And I myself will do my best to help you ignite the fire in the future and become the star of the stars. 11 Wei gently smashed a sly in front of Sophie. Sophie and her forces did not join the Violet Alliance as the Morning Monk Eulizia, but joined the Violet system directly as an affiliated force. This relationship is no doubt further. Although Violet is a force centered on the arcans, it does not mean that Violet only accepts arcane masters. In the future, your line of destiny will be intertwined. I will stand behind you and fully support the ideal realization of Ziwei. Sophie seems to be a lot of fun and happy, and the burden on her seems to have been completely transferred to the man in front of him. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 537. Beyond the walls of the Potsdam Palace in the Rhine Union is a huge stone plaza, which is a military ban and does not allow people to enter and exit at will, so it is usually a silent barrier separating the Potsdam Palace from the entire city of Berlin. But today, on December 31, 1787, the sacred calendar, on the entire stone square outside the Potsdam Palace, is like a cloud, murderous. The most elite knights of the Rhine Union, the 18th Rhine family, gathered in the city of Berlin after the horn of Ludwig's ruling, gathered in the stone square outside the walls of the Potsdam Palace. More than 800 years ago, Ludwig's ancestors once gathered all the Rhine knights here, sealed the land and established the territory. The Rhine Union also appeared on the territory of the Orient continent for the first time as a country. And it has become a major military power in the continent of Orient. After that, a total of 800 years have passed, and no one has ever ruined this sad horn and called all the Rhine knights, because in the remains of the ancestors, this horn was only at the moment when the Rhine Union was dying. Only when it can be blown, is it a tragic and deadly battle. Today, however, on the last day of the 1787 sacred calendar, Ludwig, who was on the wall of the Potsdam Palace, was dressed in an armor. More than 70 years old, he once again wore the armor that had been battling the north and the south. Although the pale white hair reminded him that he had already entered the Jubilee, but the momentum of the whole person was so determined and courageous, such as the same handle sharp to the ultimate knight rifle. Next to him is Reinhard, a bright gold armor. This legendary armor comes from the gift of the glorious Lord's Church 300 years ago. It is the Pope's tribute to the Rhineland as a powerful backbone against the Holy Norman Empire. Efforts have been made to call for a set of armor filled with light power created by the most powerful gods at that time. Reinhard was originally the handsome man who best fits the traditional aesthetic of the Rhine. His whole person wearing the glorious blessing armor shines like the sun, but even so, he is not as good as a white-haired Ludwig. The momentum of governance is as strong. On the top of the hard rock square, the elites of the 18 Rhine family gathered here. They fulfilled the ancient contract of the ruling family, and in the short period of 5 days after the cataclysm, regardless of the losses and disasters in the personal territory, personally led the family's most elite knight to Berlin. Everyone knows one thing: the war is about to happen. Reinhard is in power and looks at the tens of thousands of elite knights in the square. It can be said that more than half of the military forces of the entire Rhine Union have gathered here. The tens of thousands of soldiers and their mounts quietly and without any noise, just like silent. The sculpture is generally silent, but there is a powerful and unimaginable power in this silence. He nodded with satisfaction. As long as the Rhine people still maintain the bravery of the ancestors, then this country will never be conquered. The warriors of the Rhine, since the establishment of the Rhine Union 800 years ago, our country has finally reached a dangerous moment. The undead in the bones of the earth has come out, the dark sky is over half a country. They have chosen as the first step in conquering the continent of Orient. The war is about to break out. Ludwig's ruling and impassioned voice echoed over the entire hard rock square and entered the ears of every Rhine knight. This battle will determine the fate of the entire federation. Once it fails, our country will lose the power of resistance. The sky is shrouded in dark clouds. The people are enslaved by the dead. Even if death cannot be attributed to rest, our country and nation will be completely defeated. Can you accept such a tragic fate? No. The Rhine people never give in. Under the call, all the Rhine knights became full of blood. They were handheld with a uniform gun, and the gunpoint of the cavaliers was erected like a sharp thorn in the sky. Like a piece of steel in the woods. Yes, the spirits of the ancestors fought with us. The blood of the Rhine people never surrendered this choice. We will fight with the undead, and victory will be in our hands. Charge, proud Rhine knights, you are the legend of the world of war and invincible. Ludwig took the sword and took the scabbard and held it high. Under his call and encouragement, all the Rhine people were full of fighting will and have the greatest confidence in winning. The enemy is less than a day away from us. After eating and carrying the bag, we will be in the Luhard plain and fight with the undead. The Luhade plain is the vast plain of the outer plains of Berlin. There is no danger on the entire Great Plains. The terrain is flat and can be said to be the best battleground for the Rhine knights. Ludwig's long sword is directed to the north, and the dark sky has been extended beyond the city of Berlin. The Rhine people have already retired, otherwise the whole kingdom will be shrouded in darkness. Reinhard, my son, I will hand you the sword that the ancestors fought in the north and the south, and you will replace me as the vanguard of the army. Although Ludwig is in power, he wants to be a front-line fighter, but the Federation still needs him to sit down and plan his life. His old life cannot be consumed by high-intensity wars. Therefore, he will personally inherit the ancient swords of the family. Hand it over to Reinhardt's hands. Reinhardt took the sword with one knee and respectfully. Although it is only an epic sword in terms of texture, the ancient heritage and political meaning contained in it are too important. Von Neumann, the first knight of the Federation, I will hand over the command of the army to you. I hope you can bring a brilliant victory. Ludwig took the red flag to von Neumann, the head of the Rhine Knights, the first knight of the Federation, the most powerful commander recognized by the Rhineland. Von Neumann is a middle-aged man who is less than 50 years old. His whole person is as strong as steel. Whether it is the body or the soul, his life is self-disciplined to the extreme, despite being the first knight of the Federation and the Knights of the Rhine. The head of the group, almost the first person under the Lutheran Union's administration from Ludwig, but insisted on practicing as an ascetic, his power has already reached a pure ultimate. Von Neumann's meticulous knee-shouldered position, the red battle flag was taken in a perfect position. This is a brilliant battle flag with traditional glory and a long history. It is almost fluttering in the entire 800-year history of the Rhine Union. A major war. The ruling adult, I will do my best to win the final victory. Von Neumann stood up. From this moment on, he is the supreme commander of the tens of thousands of elite soldiers of the Rhine Union, who are at least high-ranking knights. Responsible for the decisive battle between the army of the dead and the land of the bones. The Lord of the Cold will, should this army be the most powerful knight in the whole of the Orient continent? I think they will succeed. In the corner, the young magic master of the Thousand Laws Tower, Duke of de Morgana, her daughter, is whispering to Kelsud. The representative of the Thousand Family Tower, Cold Will Kelsud, has not left the Rhine Union during this time. He has conducted in-depth and detailed investigation and research on the dark sky from various angles, and communicated as a bridge. Tower and the Rhine Union. However, even on the day of the decisive battle, the Tower of the Thousand Laws still did not decide to participate in the war, and did not send the most elite masters. This is not only a disappointment for Ludwig's administration, but even Kelsud himself has some regrets. After all, the Tower of the Thousand Laws is the inheritance of the great first Fatetafat. Although the undead King Bades was once the first master of magic in mankind, his legendary title is later than Tulefat. The elite mages of the Tower of Law confronted the undead masters from the bones on the battlefield. If you think about it, you will be excited. The Knights of the Rhine are not only the most elite army and spiritual beliefs of the Rhine. Even if you look at the entire continent of Orient, including the Holy Norman Empire, there is no possibility that any other country will gather thousands of high-ranking knights. The Army of the Formation. This is already the elite of the country of the knights, and the last card of Ludwig's ruling. Kelsud shook his head gently. Who knows what power Bards has in his hands? According to the highest level of intelligence, he is the initiator and convener of the entire Dark Council, arguably the initiator of the war that will sweep the entire Orient world in the future. Just a few hundred kilometers away from the new Wagut fort, where the dark sky was first raised, the chaotic death atmosphere, a horrible white ghost portal opened, and the endless army of the dead were passing through the portal, from the dead. Everything is in the world of Orient. After the Holocaust, the cost of the necromancer spells on the Orient continent has been reduced by almost half, and the power of each necromancer spell has increased dramatically. Bad sire, look, our army is boundless, we'll conquer the world. Bards sighed, a black robe under the necromancer said with a flattering. Oh, these bones are in the face of one of the most powerful knights in Europe, Bard said with a hint of ridicule. Do you know why I chose the first conquering country to be the Rhineland? Harman. The necromancer named Harman thought for a long time, and finally he only shook his head. Rhine knights are very disciplined. They are very powerful and are the most perfect soldiers. Undead King Baders waved his hand. I have mastered the perfect means of turning these knights into death knights. They will all fall into my hands, join my majesty, become the backbone of the undead natural disaster to conquer the world. Everything is in your plan, the great Bades, Harman quickly complimented. Go, Harman, the Rhine army has gathered outside the Potsdam Palace, led these bones and they fought a battle, and sent them a brilliant victory. Remember, to be true, to flee, my Harman, don't come back. Bards showed an ironic ridicule. The Rhine people are under great pressure. They must have a victory. Then I will give them a victory. The real test is behind. I hope my future Death Knights can perform even more. Wonderful, give me more surprises. Yes, my majesty, I will go all out and send them a victory. Harman nodded quickly. Hey, die, flesh and blood, dead meat carts can also give them, but remember, I don't want the necromancer to die too much. Every master is the most precious resource, Bades reminded. Follow, as you wish. Harman instantly felt that his mind was connected to a huge spiritual hub, where the undead King Bades gave him a large part of the control of the undead army. In the undead army, except for the necromancer and a few high-ranking undead, most of the souls of the undead are manipulated in the hands of the superiors. Their every move on the battlefield cannot be independent, and they can only obey the command of the ruler. Von Neumann, the enemy has already appeared. They are in the town of Newt in the north. The scout brought back the enemy's news, the endless ocean, the terrible flesh and blood and the meat car. This must be the enemy, the main force. They are coming. Von Neumann pressed the sword with one hand, and the commander of the 18th Rhine family was sitting in the military account, and Jena was also represented as the representative of the Duke of Keutel. The army of the dead has never appeared on the land of Orient. We know very little about their strength. Please be cautious about tomorrow's war. Don't push it all out. Strike out and attack the enemy's army. I have to observe and understand that they really the power. Von Neumann's voice is not big, but it is very calm. Everyone has nodded cautiously. This is a battle that determines the destiny of the country. No one will take it lightly. Von Neumann placed the main force of the Rhine Knights on the outskirts of Berlin city backed by Jiancheng. You can enter and retreat, and the initiative is completely in your own hands, so you are not worried about being attacked by the other side. In the dark night when the fingers disappeared, the army of the dead did not launch an attack, which made von Neumann sigh of relief, and the tense night passed. The next day when the day was bright, the knights of the Rhine Knights were eating breakfast, and new information came. The undead army is marching toward us, and will arrive after about half a magic time. Then the horns in the barracks were bright and the atmosphere was tense, and the Rhine Knights gathered together. The burden of the Federation is on us. All the federal citizens are waiting for our victory. The elderly, women and children, they have lost their homes, shivering under the dark sky, and Ludwig has made a lot of efforts. Rescue them, but if we fail, everything will be meaningless. Von Neumann summoned the generals. Reinhardt, the ruling adult, will entrust you with the vanguard, and then you will be rushing for the first time. Reinhardt, who was wearing the glorious messenger, stood up and he performed a standard military ceremony. Please be reassuring, this battle will win. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 538. The catastrophe has been maintained for a week. Even at noon, the sun in the sky is faint and yellow, and looking up at the sun is no longer dazzling. In this case, the sun naturally cannot bring enough light and heat. The last day of the sacred calendar was very cold in 1787. The land on the Luhart plain was covered with a layer of white frost. Both humans and horses breathed white. Ha, the knights are moving in a small, rhythmic manner, so that their body can quickly ease from the cold stiffness. Reinhardt personally wiped his knight's rifle. This is an epic rifle made of celestial stone. It is extremely sharp and invincible. He looks like a real martial artist wearing a glory messenger armor. Unstoppable. A large, white, crowded scorpion has appeared on the horizon. These cockroaches have become stronger than a month ago. Every cockroach is fully armed, and there are huge 78 in the middle. Mijo's flesh and blood, they belong to the high-level creation of necromancer spells, and each flesh and blood can easily crush the comrades below the master class. At the back of the Bohai Sea is a meat-cranked car. These huge ground meat trucks are constantly creating new scorpions and flesh and blood scorpions. The necromancers, all under the black robes, dominate the army of the deceased. Wool. The number of enemies exceeds 100,000. The mage who used the reconnaissance on the sky returned the observations. This result made many people in the military account take a breath. Von Neumann's face did not have any expression, like a hard granite. Blow the horn to inform Reinhardt, to the time of his attack. Reinhardt has already covered his visor. He is armed with only a pair of eyes and mouth exposed to the air. The blue feathers on the top of the golden helmet are very obvious among the steel knights wearing silver-white armor. Reinhardt didn't say much. After hearing the horn from the military account, he raised his epic rifle, Arush. The Knights of the Rhine Knights followed Bernhardt's body and began to accelerate the charge in a neat and orderly manner. They were all knights of many years and grew up on horseback almost all the time. They fought in the north and south in hundreds of years. Invincible, this has laid a great territory and mighty prestige for the Rhine Union. When this steel torrent really collided, the speed far exceeded the speed of ordinary galloping horses, and the ocean and steel torrents finally collided in front. Whether it is the Rhineland side or the bone-buried land, everyone is paying attention to this scene, and the situation in the next will determine the changes in the offensive and defensive positions of the two sides. Reinhardt took the lead, the blood of the blood was boiling, and the white light in the knight's rifle in his hand permeated, as if he had penetrated the heavenly stone, turning the whole lance into a shining weapon, the glorious messenger glittering. Even now, when the Lord of Glory has left the power to be greatly discounted, it is also a big killer for the undead. The gun was like a dragon, and Reinhardt's horse leaped high. He directly locked a huge flesh and blood that was nearly 10 meters high at the forefront. This monster made him out of anger. How much? The body of the Rhine can accumulate such a filth that should not exist in this world. The huge flesh and blood madly waved the huge steel chopper in his hand, trying to block the spur of the knight's rifle. Without knowing the eyes of many eyes, the first collision between the Dark Council and the mainland of the Orient was officially staged. The epic rifle, which was infused with Reinhardt's almost half-blood force, did not disappoint the person who cared about him. This invincible weapon almost destroyed the huge horrible steel chopper in the hands of flesh and blood in an instant, and then smashed into it. Among the brains, this negative energy is the most concentrated place. Reinhardt still leaps high above the sky at the moment. He seems to have lost gravity for a short time, staying on the sky for a long time, and then the epic rifle in his hand has broken through the defense of the flesh and blood surface into the depths of its brain. The glorious messenger of Reinhardt shines brightly, and the golden light condenses a pair of golden wings behind him. It is the stunt that comes with the legendary armor, the wing of angels. In the next second, the pure brilliance is directly poured into the brain through the knight's rifle in Reinhardt's hand, completely ruining all the negative energy. The control core of the necromancer spell is also thoroughly under this brilliant blow. Destroy. Then, under the watchful eyes of countless people, this seemingly fierce flesh and blood smashed completely, and collapsed to the ground, crushing countless embarrassment. Must win. The battlefield turned into a dead silence in a moment, and then a wild cheer broke out in the next moment. The Rhineland side sent out a huge cheer, and the enemy had such oppressive horror monsters in lean. The Heart Knight is vulnerable, it seems that these dead are not terrible. The morale-spirited knights rushed to the horse and were unstoppable. They almost slammed into the interior of the Bohai Sea almost as if they were huge arrows, and began to confront the front line. I really deserve to be the only son of the ruling adult, the example of the Rhine people. A big lord sent a hearty laugh. After a blow, it turns into a powder, but the enemy is just like this. We will win this battle. Reinhardt is already a diamond knight, and this hit uses the power of the glorious messenger, von Neumann reminded. However, he is still very satisfied with Reinhardt's recent actions, and he is fully committed to ensuring that the results can be created in the first place, which can greatly enhance his morale and dispel the fear in his heart. After all, this battle is not to fight against humans such as humans or orcs, but to fight against the horrible dead. Even the knights who are brave enough to fight against death will worry that the soul will not rest after death, but will be enslaved by the enemy. In fact, in the middle of the undead army, the tall flesh and blood is not a target of unstoppable. The huge barrier they formed stopped the rising knights in an instant, and they were able to use the brute force against the high-ranking knights. Warfare, except for a few masters of the cavaliers, can solve these monsters in a short time. Most of the enemies are still struggling. Soon the grievances rushed up. They were concentrated bodies of negative energy. Unusual physical attacks could not cause any harm to them, but they could cause great trouble to the soul and attention of the knights. If in the past, only a high-ranking Lord of the Glory of the Lord of the Five Rings, the Holy Ring, the radiant power of the garland will completely destroy these grievances and make them horrible. Mourning. But now, only with a more inefficient approach, von Neumann nodded slightly to a magician nearby, and the magician emerged with several protective colors of different colors like eggshells. And then appeared in the first line of the battle by transmitting spells. Spiritual Storm is the most famous spell of the spiritual school. The wild spiritual shock is detonated in an instant. The magician who casts this spell is a magician of the spiritual school. Although the Rhineland is a country of knights, it does not mean that there is no magician in this country. After all, in the war, various supernatural phenomena and strange spell effects are the basic principles and elements of war that any military strategist must learn to deal with. The Knights of the Rhine Knights had accepted the protection of the magical five-ring group protection spells before the storm, so in this massive mental storm, they were only dizzy and disgusting. The physical fitness of the high-ranking knights far exceeds that of ordinary people, so no knight falls off the horse. However, this spiritual storm is a big killer against the spirit of grievances. These spiritual monsters with negative energy condensed cannot survive in the spiritual storm, just like the summer ice melts and collapses in an instant, and ultimately belongs to nothingness. The commander of the undead army, Harman, the undead master of magic, knows that he must complete the mission of His Majesty, and he must defeat the enemy, but he must also put enough pressure on the enemy to make everything look very real. So he issued new instructions in the surging magic crystal, and the meat-cranked car that was walking at the last side of the army was stopped. There were 5 necromancers standing around each of the meat grinders. At each sharp corner, start joint casting. The Lord of the Cold Will, the necromancer, is dispatched. Jenna in the sky detected the situation for the first time, and said to Cursed, who was next to him. In the war mode of the Orient continent, the strong men above the legend and the legend rarely fight in the first time, not because they are compassionate or arrogant, but because of an old saying, unknown enemy the most terrible. This is why the magic master who uses the mental storm must first ensure that several magical guards are dare to appear in the first line of casting. Even a legendary spellcaster with heavy protection, under the circumstance of the enemy's deliberate calculations, is likely to fall to death in an instant, so the warring parties generally do not use the legendary strong, but routine operations. Only when the conventional battle is about to decide the outcome, and the legendary strongman of one side has to debut to reverse the situation, the war will proceed to the next stage. The cruel and terrorist war. The victory and defeat of the strongest is essential, almost you can decide the outcome of the entire battle in an instant. For the undead king of the bones and his army of the dead, von Neumann maintains the deepest vigilance and respect. After all, this undead king was already the third law of the legendary legend nearly 1,000 years ago. He doesn't know how strong it is. It can be said that bards alone is better than 1,000,000 troops. As long as the undead king does not play, von Neumann will hold down the cards in his hands. He and the staff have worked hard for a long time. Everything is to defeat the undead king in a short time. Otherwise, the ocean will never be able to calm down. People are even more likely to consume dead people. On the battlefield, it is also the strongman of the legendary ranks. A magician can be said to be a strong fighter. The efficiency of killing an enemy is far more than that of a warrior. But everything is in dynamic balance. For the legendary caster of the enemy, all the legendary comrades will be transformed into assassins. As long as the enemy's legendary caster dares to appear on the battlefield, the endless means will take turns to ensure that the other party's legendary caster must focus most of his life on keeping his own life. Of course, the premise of all this is that the two sides of the war are evenly matched or have little difference. Once the high-level forces are crushed, the war will be no suspense. Necromancers and butchers are in a state of extreme security, and they are not strong enough to be eradicated, so everyone can only wait quietly for their spell casting. The dark sky on the sky has spread to the outskirts of Berlin. The sky in the north of the Luhard plain has turned grayish-white, while the sky in the south is yellow. This strange scene is being staged, and the dividing line is exactly 2. The first line of military confrontation. Assault. Reinhardt is almost invincible. As a Diamond Knight, he is the strongest force under the legendary ranks. He wears a shining ambassador and has a natural restraint on the undead fighting power around his body. It will be greatly discounted. He completely sees the sea as nothing, all the power is used to solve the flesh and blood, and to rescue his subordinates from danger and suffering. In a short quarter of an hour, he has already eliminated 8 huge flesh and blood. The entire Knights United has penetrated into the Bohai Sea for more than 3 kilometers. From the sky, they have been completely surrounded by the deceased army. On a small hill, the knights around Reinhardt have very few reductions. Most of them don't even have a single wound. Although they are sweating, they are fighting high spirits. They saw the hope of victory in this battle. However, in the next moment, the magical array of the necromancer was finally arranged, the chain of the meat-cranked car was booming, and the huge throwing arm was raised high. The horrible grey and dark red scum of the horror was thrown far away. A few kilometers away, directly sprayed to the army of the Rhine Knights. Combination protection spells are activated. The protective law array that has been preparing for a long time has quickly risen within the Rigis Knights. This is the mainstream of the war for many years. Jenna has also joined the Masters group to fulfill the fate of the Rhine Union. A force of your own. Combined protection spells can protect against multiple elements, physics, and spirit. Although it is not targeted at a certain type of attack, it is the most comprehensive and practical. A huge mask was erected over the Rhine army, and the filth in the sky descended from the sky. The magicians on both sides finally began a frontal collision. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 539. Magical confrontation is not just a brilliant light and shadow effect and powerful power. In fact, the magician confrontation above the master level is full of uncertainty and danger. The magical power of the magician lake is limited. Most of the spells that are cast are still needed to absorb the magical elements of the nearby area. When the two sides of the battle start casting at the same time, there will be competition for elements, which has a great chance. The instability and incompleteness of a method can cause great hidden dangers and even cause irreparable damage to the caster himself. In the confrontation of a few public legendary spellcasters in the history of Orient, the collision of the legendary spells of the Nine Rings often takes all the magic elements of the nearby area in a short time to form a de facto forbidden zone. Therefore, after a long period of improvement and innovation, the way to jointly cast magical arrays has become the mainstream method of casting spells by military magicians. Because the magic array provides sufficient stability and creates a barrier and protection between the element and the magician, even if the spell fails, it will not cause too much damage to the caster. The Filth of the Undead Masters delivered by the Meat-Cranked Car is a 7-ring war spell jointly developed by several liches. Day of the Evil. This spell combined with dangerous toxins and negative energy can be effectively eliminated. Most defenses protect spells. The Rhine people soon enjoyed this not-so-fabulous experience. Even though the layers of protective law were shining, these evil filths easily passed through most of the protective arrays, as the black rain curtains fell on the armor of the knights. Next, the horror of horror quickly spread on these unfortunate Rhinemen. Their expressions were distorted and madly shaken. Some even completely ignored the strict military method and directly took off their armor. At this time, other talents noticed that there were large patches of dark red and green scars on the surface of his skin. The horrible poison and magic were raging on these brave knights and would take their lives. In the first time, the Rhine knights had more than 100 wounded people, and more than a dozen of the most serious ones were on the verge of death, and soon the end of life will be ushered in. The green soul fire shines in the eyes of one of the most serious knights. He staggered and stood up. The flesh and blood on his body fell off directly on the ground, leaving only the white skeleton and holding his own arms. Hey, the wind of a sharp blade swayed, and the knight who was about to turn into the undead instantly turned into a pile of powder. The head of the Rhine knights, von Neumann, rehung the knight's sword back to the waist. His face was dignified. After losing the help of the Lord of the Lord of the Lord of the Glory, it can be said that the Rhine people did not respond well to these horrible necromantic spells, and the number and quality of the rhythms magicians could never exceed the burial. The Lich and Necromancer of the Bone Land. The best defense is the offense. Watching the Necromancer around the far-reaching meat car start the second round of spellcasting, and von Neumann slams the military command, the Lord of Schweineiger, led the left wing. Fighting for the Rhine, at the military account center, a heavily armed lord attended the single knee squad, and he was the contemporary patriarch of the Schweineiger family, one of the 18 knights of the Rhine Knights. Rank, the legendary Knight of Bravery. The Lord of Harder, led the right wing of the headquarters. For the sake of the Rhine, Harder is also one of the 18 great lords, the legendary knight. The most priority goal, quickly break through the enemy line, destroy the enemy's meat car and necromancer. In addition to the Rhine knights in the hands of Ludwig, the most powerful army is naturally the elite of the other 17 great lords, except that Jenna's father likes to build a ship, all of which are naval. The remaining 16 big lords each led the elite knights ranging from 300 to 1000 to the outskirts of Berlin. There are 5 legendary knights among the 16 great lords. The rest are all diamond knights. There is not enough Wu Yang. They cannot inherit the ancestral knights and territories. Schweineiger and Harder are the 2 most lords and the most brave. They have been impatiently sitting in the military account and looking at Reinhardt's harvest, so they will soon be after the death. With all-out attack, 2 steel torrents easily broke into the sea from the 2 wings, like sharp knives pierced into the butter. Hessman, you come to command the first and second team of the Rhine Knights, the center line. Von Neumann turned his gaze to his deputy, the deputy head of the Rhine Knights, the second knight. Hessman is a determined middle-aged man with a short, linen-colored hair and a torso. After receiving the order of von Neumann, he performed a standard military ceremony and then strode out of the military account. The Rhine Knights have a total of 5 wings, each with 800 knights, and the first and second team are the Knights of von Neumann and Hesse-Mann, which can be said to be the entire Rhine Union. The most elite and the best of the best. After von Neumann issued an order that was almost close to the general attack, the Rhine people finally broke out with the powerful strength contained in the steel wool. The 3 steel torrents directly permeated the sea, even if it was a powerful flesh and blood. There is no resistance in front of the Rhineland headed by the legendary Knights. Undead Master Harman is shivering, even though the Rhine Union is the kingdom of the Knights, even in the whole of the Orient continent the Knight, but it was not until he was facing the Rhineland army that he realized the power of the Rhine Knight. Whether it's magic or monsters, even a strong defense has no effect in front of the enemy's sharp knights. Whether it's Schweineiger, Harder, or Hesse-Mann, these 3 legendary knights have a rich confrontation. The experience of the spell, the various curses, delays, control, and damage exerted by the Undead Master are greatly reduced to their role in the legendary field, and the range spells have been accurately found by them, and the knights behind have followed. In less than a quarter of an hour, the 3 long knives all broke through the sea of several kilometers wide, to the last front of the meat car and the necromancer. Escape, Harman only had this thought, and now he can't run without losing. By the way, Budzes commanded him to defeat, and Harman issued a direct instruction, and a white aperture appeared around his body, which is the symbol of the transmission of the phalanx. To be continued. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 540. Space is forbidden, a beautiful the sky descends from the sky. A blue chain instantly locks the space around Harman. It is the bold Jenna. She uses stealth spells to find the commander of this army on the sky. And then locked this inconspicuous black robe at the moment the enemy tried to escape. Harman was shocked and did not hesitate to launch the transmission mark given by His Majesty, which is a one-time life-saving props made by His Majesty, which is worth a lot. Soon, a powerful will full of death will traverse the battlefield, and the swiftly assaulted Rhine Knight will also seize the horse in an instant. A pair of majestic eyes glanced at the battlefield, and then a purple-black portal opened openly. Harman and the dozen or so undead masters around him jumped into it. The portal only existed for a few seconds and disappeared instantly. It is Death Control Field. Deep Cold will Kel Sud watching this scene, is the field of the undead King Bads, in the level of ability has exceeded the scope of the 7-ring space imprisonment, breaking through the space restrictions directly left the locked plane. It can be said that the biggest difficulty in the battle between the entire Rhineland and the Bone in the Bone is how to deal with the Third Law and the sanctuary strongman of the undead King Bades himself. It was just a small magical prop that could not lead the entire army of the undead. After losing the equivalent of the brain, the undead army lost its order and became the enemy of the Rhine Knights. Von Neumann issued the command of the general attack in a timely manner. The Rhine Knights came out of the nest and destroyed all the cockroaches, flesh and blood and the meat grinders in the mountains. There is no doubt that the Rhine people made a brilliant battle in the first battle with the undead. The overwhelming victory, like their ancestors for thousands of years, constantly defeated one enemy after another. We are victorious. On the back of the city of Berlin, countless soldiers and residents watching the war cheered, knowing that the undead army is so horrible. When standing on the head of the city and watching the black pressure on the endless army, I don't know how much. People are in despair. Ludwig took a sigh of relief, and although the enemy was not as strong as he had imagined, the victors naturally enjoyed all the glory. The victory of this battle will also inspire half of the Rhine people who are in the desperate situation of the darkness. Reinhard was very heroic in this battle and also achieved enough results, almost the most dazzling star in this battle. He took off his sturdy helmet and smiled with a big smile. Like the warm sunshine, he touched the Ludwig on the head of the city. The Berlin residents also gave him a warm cheer. Many girls in the spring have a face. Looking at the handsome and extraordinary prince, he is a hero on the battlefield, the most admired man of the Rhine girl. Ludwig's administration also showed a happy smile. Although he has been dying, his son has grown up and will become a good commander and the next Rhineland ruling. Von Neumann, what do you think of this battle? In the post-war Potsdam Palace, 18 lords came together, and Ludwig was in charge of the first head of the Rhine Knight. If you use a sentence to describe it, it is a law-abiding one. Von Neumann frowned slightly. The regular arms of the undead have basically appeared, and they are combined together, basically in line with the information we know in advance, and the combat power is also compared. Strong. If you follow the strength of both sides, unless the undead King Bades and the powerful liches personally participate in the war, our strength will inevitably crush the enemy. Ludwig nodded with satisfaction. The citizens of Berlin, especially the refugees from the north and the landless aristocrats, are strongly demanding that we carry out counterattacks and enter the dark sky, completely expelling them from the territory of the Rhineland. I don't know if our army can do this. From a military point of view, we can go deep into the dark sky. In any case, there will be a battle with the undead King Bades. Otherwise, as long as the dark sky exists, the undead army can be continuously produced. We have not consumed them. Qualification for confrontation. As a general commander, von Neumann is naturally unable to limit his vision to this small battle under the city of Berlin. He has already carried out a deep deduction of the entire battle. Yes, even though we rushed to evacuate a large number of residents in the dark sky, there are still more than 5 million federal nationals mired in the dark sky. Everyone saw this situation today. If we let go, then the undead army will have a steady stream of seas and flesh and blood, and these dirty and ugly enemies are made of materials from our Rhiners. Ludwig took the ruling and rushed to the crown. We must crusade them and drive them out of the land of the Rhine Union. The enemy is growing stronger, and we must make a quick fix, otherwise the loss will be too unbearable. Among the 18 great lords, the territory of the whole 5 great lords has completely fallen, and the territory of the 7 great lords has fallen. It can be said that everyone feels the same, and they reach an agreement in an instant. They must march into the darkness and completely destroy the enemy's army. Just as the Rhineland Federation was preparing to play, Harman was telling the story of this battle in front of the undead King Bades. The great Bades squats. The enemy is very strong. I have tried my best, but I can't do anything. You are doing very well. Bades's voice was very loud. Although he lost a large army, he was very happy. The necromancer can manipulate the undead, be a scholar, a researcher, but not a qualified commander. In the future, the army of the undead will sweep the entire world of Orient, but we must equip this army with excellent commanders and generals, and they are in the opposite military camp. You're wise and wise. Harman is very admired. Harman replied happily, and apparently he would not be punished if he suffered a big defeat. Next step. In the second step, to lure the enemy deep, Bades smiled. This time, I will personally debut. Harman, you're returning capital, holding my military order, calling Sebutus, Brito, Hershey, the 3 lich lords come. But your majesty, the second battle is still a failure. Harman was shocked. Oh, I don't play. The enemy will never relax. Buddies looked at the city of Berlin in the shadow of the south. You must be defeated in a reasonable way, and your prey will really fall into the trap. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 541. The genius of the genius remembers, to provide you with wonderful novel reading. The war between the bones of the sacred calendar and the Rhine Union in the early 1788, known as the First Undead Natural Disaster War. At the beginning of the war, the Rhine Union won a brilliant victory, and the enemy's sea was plunged under the city of Berlin. Under the rule of the undead, the Rigi city raid was defeated by the 3 legendary lich commanders of the necromancers, and 2 of the legendary liches were put into a life-threatening state, and they could not resurrect for at least a few years. Even the great undead King Bads personally played, and was defeated by more than 10 legendary powerhouses of the Rhine Union and the helpers Ludwig secretly invited, under the siege of an ancient legendary red dragon. The source of the dark sky in New Waga Fort and the base of the undead on the continent of Orient. The war between the Bone and the Rhine Union was studied by countless mainland political forces and military observers. At the beginning many people were shocked by the hidden power of the Rhine Union. This is a double-digit legendary strongman, Ricky City. The battle even caused the earth to sink. The city originally located on the Great Plains completely disappeared, and the whole area became a new lake. The dark sky over the northern Rhine Union not only stopped expanding, but even began to shrink in an abnormal way, and the land that the undead raged seemed to recover. With the first big victory outside Berlin and the victory under Ricky, the terrorist pressure brought by the Dark Council seems to have completely vanished. Ludwig's ruling to eat a meal can meet 5 pleadings to send him to recover. Aristocrats and lords who lost their land. Even the most pessimistic people before the war are now full of optimism, thinking that the war will soon end, and the Rhine Union will undoubtedly win the war and expel the enemy from their homes. Even the most calm and cautious von Neumann commander, in this case can only follow the trend and the situation, organized an elite army to advance into the New Waga Fort, and launched the final battle. However, the result of the war has caused countless historians to sigh. In the final battle of the New Wagatburg, the lonely knights of the Rhine were under siege by the scourge. The dark sky that had already been reopened was reopened, and it will be noon. The sun completely obscured and turned into a dark night. The failure of the 3 legendary liches is only an illusion. The defeat of the undead King Bades is a trick. The undead king who is making a comeback is using the sorrowful death even in the legendary spell of the 9 rings. The legendary lich is entangled in the ancient legend of the red dragon that has entered the hard battle. It has reached the ultimate vitality and transformed him into a skeleton death dragon. The undead King Bads did his best, and the New Wagatburg was run by him for half a year. It has already become the home of the undead. The huge necromancer that is buried underground can not only build the legendary level of dark sky. The strategic spells, when the final battle entered the most critical moment, the other 9-ring legendary spell Death Reincarnation broke out in the back of the Rhine Knights, transforming the Rhine Knights, whom these undead Kings Bades admired, into the real undead. The end of this battle is the end of the hero, the end of the epic, the prelude to the dark frenzy. The elite of the Rhine Union is all ruined, and the legendary and above are exhausted by Annette. Finally, von Neumann burns himself, and the more powerful the sacred domain the undead King Bads was dragged, and only the Reinhardt and Jenna were able to escape under the protection of the deep cold will. 3 days later, the undead army captured the entire territory of the Rhine Union, and the dark sky was also expanded over every land of the Federation. So far, the first undead natural disaster war ended. Ludwig's ruling life, Reinhardt took over the throne in his father's hands, led the last resistance army into the forest in the southeast of the Rhine Union, vowed to defeat the undead, and finally recovered the entire homeland. If the beginning of the bones of the army still needs the undead Kings Bades and the legendary liches to play in the highest level, then with the death of the Rhine Knights outside the New Waygard, one after another, the knights were transformed into a death knight. Bards' reincarnation spells are almost perfect. Every converted Death Knight not only maintains the martial arts and independent self-determination ability, but also masters the power of coldness and death. They must obey the undead monarchy. The rule of Stan is completely an independent individual and existence. In addition to finally burning his own von Neumann, he was unable to complete the transformation. The body and soul were deeply studied by more than 10 undead wizards, others from the Second German Knight Hessmann, the great Lord Schweineiger and Harder. The Rhine Knights all became Death Knights, loyal to the undead King Bads, became the commander of the new undead army. With the battle to conquer the Rhine Union, Bades, the undead king, finally expanded his undead army. He almost perfectly reached the strategic plan for the first step. He began to turn his attention when he continued to digest the land he had just conquered. A country that is scheduled to conquer. The fall and collapse of the Rhine Union far exceeded the expectations of all of the Orient forces, and a seemingly even war was decided in just 7 days. Even the sacred Norman Empire, the first powerhouse of the Orient continent, was greatly shaken. Alfred IX urgently summoned the minister of the prince, and finally reached a resolution that would be used to conquer the New World, and Drake. The 6 magical armored ships of the plain were withdrawn from the world of Orient and defended the homeland. At the same time, the endless beasts rushed out of the Hullan prairie. The city-states and the principality in the southeast of Orient quickly suffered from horrible assaults. The orcs who got the magical crystal power became powerful. They were in the Beast Master. Under the command of Lottie, he was invincible, and almost every day was moving forward. In just half a month, he swept over millions of square kilometers of land and conquered one city after another. At the same time, the small forces in the Dark Council have also been dispatched, fearing that they will not be able to grab the land delineated by the Parliament. All kinds of horror and time will be staged on the mainland of Orient. The January 1788 is almost the darkest moment in human history. In this short period of 1 month, according to statistics of later historians, among the total population of 500 million people before the Olympics in Orient, more than 120 million people died in war. Even a large part of the soul cannot be attributed to the endless river of the river, converted into the undead, or made into a soul crystal by the demon. In this turbulent time, the same wild horse broke into the world of Orient. The dark forces swept the earth. Its arrogance made countless people tremble. It seems that the end of the world is coming. To be continued. Mobile users, please browse and read, a better reading experience. Arcane Age. Author, Yulin Dudu. Chapter 542. One drum, then decay, and exhausted, in Violet Fort, Ziwei is discussing the first undead scourge war with Natalia, which is his evaluation of the Rhine army. In fact, although the undead King Bade's side has a more powerful high-end power, if the Rhineland side is strong and clear, and the time it can persist, it will certainly last for more than half a year. By then, the entire Orient structure will change dramatically, and perhaps it will be a turning point. But bards used a trick to lure the enemy. Although simple, it made full use of the asymmetry of information and the tremendous pressure brought by Ludwig's administration to the half of the country. As a result, almost all of the high-level forces of the Rhine Union were killed, so the Rhine Union, one of the 5 great powers of the Orient, has completely fallen. Natalia, do you know why Bades would choose the first goal of the first battle to be the Rhine Union? Ziwei raised a strategic issue. Since the dark parliamentary trip, he has been on various channels, collecting various news. On the other hand, I have been thinking about the situation in the whole of Orient for a long time, and carried out many deductions with the help of Zero. Natalia fell into meditation. She is a girl who is very interested in military and political nature. She was trained by the Bonaparte family as a heir. She was far more educated and astute in this respect. Some of the same age aristocratic male sons. The Rhineland is strong enough, but not so powerful. Natalia stood up and stepped forward. The 5 great powers of Orient, sorted by comprehensive national strength, the Rhine Union is in 3rd place, not as good as the Holy Norman Empire and France, but beyond the Kingdom of Risa and the Kingdom of Iton. Natalia's thinking is getting clearer and clearer, and her words are getting more and more smooth, and in this war, according to the information brought back by the Lord of the Thousand Laws, Bards, and his lich, the legendary magic of the 9 rings has undoubtedly played a decisive role. The Rhine Union, which lost the Church of the Glorious Lord, even if it has gathered a double-digit legendary powerhouse, it still cannot turn the war and can only fall into the bards in the trap. There is a magical Holy Land in the Holy Norman Empire. There is also the Royal Magic Academy in France. The 3 legendary magicians are here. The magical power is far beyond the Rhine Union. Naturally, it is a bad bone. Not only that, but whether it is the Holy Norman Empire or France, there are strong people in the sanctuary. Even if faced with the undead King Bads, it will not lose the balance of the strong, and will not be quickly conquered. And the kingdom of Risa and the kingdom of Itan are weaker, but the shortcomings are very obvious. The kingdom of Residential is mostly a bitter place, the land is sparsely populated, and the value is not large. The kingdom of Itanli is too small, and there are an unstable factor is the holy city of Vatican and the Church of the Glorious Lord. The territory of the Rhine Union is located in the north-central part of the city of Orient. It has a flat terrain, a large population and abundant resources. It can be said that the war potential is very huge, but it is not so difficult to capture it. I think this is also the rule of the Rhine Union. The sake of the enemy of World War I. Ziwei's unbridled applause. Natalia's analysis is very accurate and accurately captures the key to the problem. With the continuous development of magic, the extent to which the comrades decide the outcome of the war has become lower and lower. Unless they can step into the sanctuary, it will be another level, and they will control the arena of the strongest in the field. Looking at the exquisite and huge copper version of the Orient map in front of him, he looks straight at the southeast of Violet Island, the largest island in the western Golden Sea, Sicily. What should we do now? Continue to observe the changes in the mainland's situation, or follow the established goals? Natalia and Ziwei stand side by side, eager to put forward their own suggestions. The timing is fleeting, now is the time to use the soldiers. Ziwei's fingers fell on the map of Sicily. I have been here for 2 years, several plans, and it is time to harvest. So who is our enemy? Ziwei. The stubborn aristocracy, the ambitious militants who are not willing to lose power, the big bats who like to eat human blood, and perhaps the missionaries who have just lost their brilliance. Ziwei waved his hand. In the face of the radiance of Arcane, they will be nothing. Can you swear by the victory number? Natalia was like a little girl who begged her parents to buy a cute doll, and a pair of big eyes gleamed at Ziwei. Of course, this will be the first battle of my Valkyrie, there is no loss. Ziwei printed a light kiss on Natalia's red lips. Since Ziwei's trip to the chaotic city of Palermo 2 years ago, Ziwei has laid a secret hand here and throughout Sicily. Now in the highest 5-member parliament in Palermo, the Speaker of the Green Wolf is his own hands. The Master Ada is the representative of Violet, the Monica Miss is a member of the Night Elves, and the Fortune Chamber of Commerce has a relationship with Ziwei. Very good relationship. Although Sicily was once the territory of the Kingdom of Itanli, it has been freed from the edge of the Kingdom of Itanli after the dissolution of the last kingdom, retaining great autonomy. The island is located in the center of the entire Golden Sea. It can be said that as long as the island is occupied, it will hold the throat of the Golden Sea. The area of Sicily is more than 100,000 square kilometers, with more than 1 million people. For the overseas violets, there are too many political forces on the mainland of Orient, and there are many powerful countries, which are not suitable for development. Violet Island is too narrow. Even if there is a new 6 islands, it must rely on a large land as a back, and Sicily is undoubtedly the most suitable on the geography. It can be said that it is a battleground for the military. The Kingdom of Itanli has always been less visible in the political map of the entire continent of Orient, except for the short period of more than a decade when the kingdom was established 600 years ago. In the long history of hundreds of years of war, the Kingdom of Itanli took the initiative. Or passively involved in the war, almost all weak chickens hanged by opponents. The Itanli people are free and idyllic, and they can't be called a fighting nation. What's more, there is a brighter than the sun on the Itanli Peninsula, that is, the holy city of Vatican, the Lord of the glorious Church. Many people regard the Kingdom of Itan as a vassal of the Church of the glorious Lord. In fact, more than half of the power of this country is manipulated in the hands of the bishops of the kingdoms, and the cardinals and knights of the Church of the glorious Lord. Among the top members of the regiment, the members of the Kingdom of Itanli also accounted for the largest proportion. When the Church of the Glorious Lord was in full swing, there was never a country that dared to find the troubles of the Kingdom of Iten. Since the 30 Years' War, the country has enjoyed more than 200 years of peace. But now, the King of Iten Li, Bennett XII, is in great trouble. In the big cities including the capital Milan, there are mysterious and strange blood-sucking killings. Almost all of the dead citizens are aristocratic young men and women. Most of them are handsome and beautiful, and their future is far-reaching. They are not warriors or magicians. They are born to be human beings. They are simply the darlings of the Lord. They enjoy everything. They will be happy in their lives. But now, they are all sucked up by all the blood in their bodies and turned into horrible and disgusting corpses. Hanging at the highest point of the city, even a few people were hung on the bell tower of the church. Damn vampires! They are provoking me, they are provoking the great Benist family, and are declaring war against the Great Father, like the ball, Benist 12 thundered and thundered. The extraordinary ceramic teacup fell to the ground. The waiters and maids around me crouched on the ground and did not dare to move. My dear Marty, who made you so angry, a charming and noble stunner came in. She is the Queen of Iten Li, Libella. Queen, our fears have finally come true. Just like the wars of the undead against the Rhine Union, vampires have appeared in the major cities of the Kingdom of Iten. They are unscrupulous and want to completely conquer my kingdom. Benista II has a 12-point trust in his queen, and the great anger will be extinguished in front of her. Looking at the worried king, Lipala smiled softly. Your Majesty, don't you know if you have communicated with the big man in the holy city? Either Milan, Turin, or other cities, all the cardinals have left. Benister shook his head helplessly. The Father left Orient and gloriously abandoned us, since the catastrophe. Although I insist on sending messengers to the holy city every day, there is no news at all. Since the first time in the Piliri daily on the 25th of the holy calendar, the term Holocaust remnant son was used to refer to the son after the departure of the glorious Lord. The word was quickly adopted by the entire Orient continent. Adoption, not only used to describe the sun in the sky, but also to describe the big event of this world vibration. Your Majesty, please rest assured, I believe that the great man of the holy city will never let the kingdom of Iten Li fall. You should also summon the Prime Minister and Marshal. In any case, you must keep big cities like Milan and Turin, and Beniast. The domain that the family passed down from generation to generation. Libella stepped forward and intimately supported her husband and made recommendations. Yes. The Rhine Union is so powerful, but it has been buried in the land for 7 days. You can't make up 10 legendary powerhouses. The kingdom of Iten Li can only be fixed. I will command the Prime Minister and the Marshal to concentrate on the troops. Big cities, and the territories of the hustle and bustle. Benias seemed to find the backbone of the heart in an instant. He said with a sigh of relief, transfer, summon Prime Minister Jalani and Marshal Baselli. Then I will retire first, said Queen Libera softly. Benias squeezed his wife's hand tightly, rubbing her smooth and delicate skin, full of loving eyes and looking directly at the noble and beautiful queen. Without you, I really don't know how to do it. My Majesty, you are so wise and wise. Under your leadership, Iten Li will become even stronger. Queen Libera looked directly at her husband with a loving eye, affectionate. But soon the arrival of Prime Minister Giuliani and Marshal Baselli interrupted the tenderness of the king and queen, and Lipala withdrew from the hall and returned to his palace. In the seemingly empty palace, the red clouds linger, and a human form quickly forms in it. He is tall and straight, handsome, wearing a luxurious red dress, courteous and polite. Even if it is purely from the perspective of appearance, he is also a beautiful man, and there will be no better than the whole of the Orient continent. Noble temperament fits in him so much that the whole person looks like a real king, far better than Benist XII. Nicholas, my master, Liboleme's eyebrows contain spring, and the skin becomes pink instantly. She is excited and can't help herself. She is pleasantly engaged in the arms of the handsome man in front of her. Yes, the handsome man who appeared in the Queen's palace is Prince Nicholas, the strongest of the vampires. Not all of the Supreme are pure-hearted and like to be alone. Prince Nicholas is a model of enjoyment. All the beauties he owns are his favorite beauty, different planes from Orient. And different races, each with its own style, all turned into a vampire, and he was imprisoned. Compared to his hundreds of beauties, the Queen of Libella in front of her is not so good, not to mention she has a husband, but now, Prince Nicholas gives her a smile like an aphrodisiac. Libera, my love someone. Nicholas hugged tightly with Libella. He printed a kiss one after another on the lips of Queen Lipala, on the face, on the frown, on the neck, and the kiss of Libella trembled, completely soft. In his arms, Nicholas's vampire fangs slowly spread out, and then printed on Lipala's neck, began to absorb the blood in her body. Libella twitched gently in Nicholas's arms, and a huge pleasure hit him. This is the ultimate enjoyment, far beyond the limits of any desire, even if the legendary glorious paradise is not so pleasant. Feel. Nicholas did not intend to take Lipala's life, she has great value, so after giving her a very high enjoyment, Nicholas slowly gathered the vampire fangs, gentle eyes looking directly at the Queen of the Arms. You know what I am coming for, Lipala. Nicholas master, you want to conquer the kingdom of Italy, isn't it? Queen Lipala revealed a sick smile. I am willing to give you everything, I will give you advice and make you enter smoothly the land of the Lord. My dear Lipala, you are too smart. If my plan is successful, I will give you the highest reward, far beyond your imagination. No, I don't want any return, I just want to be with you at the owner, Libera said quickly. Well, I will give you a high-level vampire blood, let you be my servant, Prince Nicholas said confidently. I have no fear of the kingdom of Italy, I only worry about one thing, then it is the Church of the Glorious Lord and the Holy City of Vatican. Marty trusts me very much. I have never concealed anything. Any major military affairs will be discussed with me in advance, Libella said excitedly. I will inform you as soon as possible about the glorious Lord and the Holy City. Thank you, Libella, very grateful. Nicholas once again kissed Lippo on Queen Lipala's knee.